Hey, how's it going? Today I'm talking all things meniscus tears.
This is Running to the Castle, a podcast for injury-prone RunDisney runners on a journey to running magical miles. Join me, Dr. Allie, as I share the secrets I've gathered as a runner, doctor of physical therapy, and coach. You'll learn the exact ways I get my clients to the castle strong without feeling broken or held together with KT tape as they cross the finish line.
Okay, so you want to know if you have a meniscus problem. Your knee is bugging you. You can't run the amount that you want, and you're thinking it might be your meniscus. Now, of course, I'm going to preface this by saying this is not medical advice. Please go see your healthcare provider to make sure that what you think it is, you've had an assessment, you've been evaluated, and your healthcare provider agrees. Now, the information I'm going to share with you, you can find by Googling. So take everything with a grain of salt, get professional advice. That is just my warning. Okay, great. So meniscus tears typically happen with no contact with another person. There has to be a compression and a twist. Think when you plant your foot on the ground and you twist. Another way, not quite as common, but it can happen, is repetitive motion where you squat deep over time. We're talking deep, deep. Okay, so this can typically happen for somebody who has to stay in a butt below the knees squat position for work. So it's a little less common because the majority of us aren't staying in that position for extended length of time. But the meniscus tear where it's a plant and twist, that can happen randomly. Think about if you were to step off a curb and you stepped wrong and you just twisted a little bit. Okay, so that's one way to do it. What are symptoms of a meniscus tear? So most people who have a meniscus injury have a feeling like their knee's going to give way on them. You take a step and you feel like you're going to kind of keep tumbling. That knee's going to give out on you. And if they have a particular kind of tear, their knee can actually get locked in place where they can't straighten out their knee past a certain point. So it's bent a little bit or bent a certain amount, and then you go to straighten it out and it gets locked. There's this catch and you can't get past it. Okay, so those are ways to tear the meniscus and what symptoms you would have if you have a tear. Now, of course, you could also have some pain and some swelling. So let's back it up just a hot second. What is a meniscus? So meniscus is a cartilage in your knee joint. You actually have two in each knee. Singular is meniscus, plural is menisci. So you have two menisci in each knee, a medial or inner side of the knee and a lateral or outer side of the knee meniscus. They act as extra cushion for your knee because of how much weight goes through that joint. Your body is really smart and it made extra cushion for you. The menisci have some parts that have blood supply. So this is the 10 to 30% of the outer zone, and other parts that don't have a good blood supply. So if the tear happens in the section with good blood supply, there's a chance that the meniscus can heal on its own with or without surgery. If the tear happens in the other parts, then there's no chance that it will heal. Your body needs blood supply in order to heal. Okay, so what is a meniscus tear? We just talked about what meniscus is. What is a tear? So a tear in the meniscus, it can be a slit, it can be a handle-looking flap, or you can rip it. These tears typically happen when you're putting weight through the joint and twist. Just like I said before, there's a compression and a twist. So this compression causes a compression on that meniscus and then a shearing force which tears it. So think about just in general, what a shear force is. If you plant your foot and then try and slide your foot along the ground, the slide along the ground is a type of shear force. Okay, so when you do that compression and then that shear, that's what can tear it. Most people talk about a click, a catch a lock of their knee. And these are just classic signs of a meniscus tear. The catch and lock can happen because if you have a flap, it gets in the way of the knee joint from moving properly. So your knee essentially gets stuck or locked in place until that meniscus flap gets out of the way. So one thing I would do with my patients in the physical therapy clinic is sometimes that catch would happen before they came into therapy. I always told them, come into therapy, even if you're in a lot of pain, because we can do things to make you feel better. And so one time somebody, I remember very specifically, they were like, well, I can't move my knee. Like, I should just cancel my therapy appointment because I only get, this person got 20 therapy appointments per calendar year. And I was like, no, please come in because it's locked and we can unlock it. And there was this little maneuver I could do to unlock it for them. And then they could do some exercises. They could bend and straighten their knee. So, who tears their meniscus? Tears can happen in athletic or non-athletic populations, and someone who's playing in a sport or activity and plants their foot and then twists, creating a tear. So, like I said, if you just step off the curb, twist, while your leg is planted on the ground, you can tear it. You can also get worn out menisci. Your meniscus can wear out. It's just general wear and tear. Over time, this worn out spot gets irritated, gets inflamed, can cause pain and swelling. Meniscus tears are more likely to happen in someone who has a job that involves a lot of squatting, ladder or stair climbing, or crawling on your hands and knees. And then it can happen in runners because of uneven surfaces, if you have to jump out of the way of somebody else, kind of doing those dynamic movements that you aren't necessarily planning on doing. You typically think of running as going in a straight trajectory, but sometimes you have to go side to side. So actually, I don't know the stats on this, but I'd be curious on knowing how many people who do run walk intervals in RunDisney have knee problems. Maybe they have meniscus problems because there's a lot of side to side movement and unplanned movements because of the walking and then running and then walking and running and going from left to right to accommodate that, or going around somebody who's going left, right, and accommodating for that, speeding up, slowing down, things like that. So I'd be really interested to know what that would be like. That's just a little thought I had as I'm talking right now. So, what is the prognosis with a meniscus tear? Most people can live with a torn meniscus. It usually just depends on how inflamed and irritated your knee is. So, you could have a torn or worn out meniscus and have no pain or problems because it's not the tear itself that causes pain. It's the irritation of the whole joint itself that causes the pain. So sometimes, and especially if it's a bucket handle tear, the tear keeps flipping back and forth in the knee. And so then it keeps getting inflamed. Other times the tear just sits there. If the irritation can be calmed down, then the person can live with it and manage the symptoms. So not everybody needs surgery. Some people just need to calm down that initial pain and manage it as they keep going. So do I need surgery? Maybe or maybe not. Just like I was just saying, some people need it, some people don't. So I have a few statistics in here. So in some studies, it's suggested that an arthroscopic meniscal debridement, so a cleanup surgery, occurs up to 700,000 times a year in the US. But not everyone needs or gets a surgery. And the two types of surgery that you could have for a meniscus tear are a meniscectomy, where they just clean it up and I call it Pac-Man chomp it out. And then the other is a meniscus repair. So a meniscectomy is the arthroscopic surgery where you just have like those 3 keyholes in your knee the surgeon cleans up the meniscus, just taking out the torn parts and evening things out. Then a meniscus repair is where the surgeon takes sutures, sews the meniscus back together. This can only be done when the tear is in the part of the meniscus that has blood supply. If there's no blood supply, the meniscus cannot repair itself, even though it's been sewn back together. So even though they sew it back together, you still need blood supply to finish the job. Essentially, the sew back together is just to get those pieces to touch each other so that then your body can do its job the rest of the way. Even though it's sewn together, if your body can't finish off the job, it doesn't do much. Can you prevent a meniscus tear? So strengthening the muscles in your legs, so hips, knees, ankles, the muscles that attach at those joints, so that your body has better control over the motions your body goes through daily and with running. So by keeping your legs strong, you have an improved chance of your muscle memory kicking in when you do something unplanned. So like if you're going to step off that curb and you step weird, your muscles can have memory of, oh, okay, now we just need to pull us back into alignment instead of keep going and cause a tear. Doing regular exercise also keeps your joints healthy, so there's plenty of lubricant in the joint to keep things moving. So that's more for the worn out meniscus. So a worn out meniscus is also another type of arthritis in the knee where it's worn down, and when it's worn down, there's less. So let me back up. In your knee, naturally, there's a natural lubricant. And when the meniscus or other cartilage in your knee is worn down, it actually takes more effort, more oomph, more repetition to get the synovial fluid, the lubricant that lines your joints, to swish in all of the crevices. So by exercising regularly, you are regularly lubricating your knee joint. So then it can keep it less irritated, less inflamed. And then what are some things I can do to help my knee feel better if I have a tear? So some gentle knee exercises for meniscus tears. Modified rest and ice can help if you have a tear. Also heat, depending on if you like ice or heat. So the goal in the first 2 weeks after a new meniscus tear is to calm down pain and inflammation and maintain your range of motion so your knee doesn't get stuck. So you don't want to keep your knee locked out straight the whole time, because then when you go to bend it, it's going to be really tight. You also want to perform some light, gentle exercises to keep blood flowing to the knee and improve mobility. So an exercise like a quad set helps bring blood flow to the area by activating your quad muscles in your thigh. Then this increased blood flow brings in good nutrients, takes away any toxins that are built up during the inflammatory reaction, which is a natural process. And then that can decrease the swelling in your knee. Doing an exercise like a heel slide helps improve how much your knee bends so you can keep it from getting too stiff. It will also bring blood flow to your knee, which in turn helps that swelling. And then finally, should you use ice or heat for a meniscus problem? I always recommend with a new injury using ice for the first week. That's because of the inflammatory reaction. This is your body's first defense to injury. So the inflammatory reaction is good when it's controlled. If it gets out of control, that's when the reaction can actually hinder healing. So for now, use ice 10 to 20 minutes at a time, as often as you need to. Typically 3 to 5 times a day for the first 7 days. After 7 days, if you want to switch to heat, you can. And if you've been in my world for any length of time, you know that one way I tell people to decide if they're using ice or heat is do the opposite of what your body is feeling. So typically with a new meniscus problem, you have warmth in the knee. It's usually a bit red or pink. And so those are signs that you should use ice because it's warm. it has heat in it, so we want to cool it down. If it were just, an older injury, typically just feels tight, but it feels cool. So it's tight and stiff, but it's cool to touch. Then you use heat. Okay, as always, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate everyone who listens to these episodes. If you have a specific question about another injury that you would like to be a focus of a podcast episode, send me a DM on Instagram, runDisney DPT.
As always, thanks so much for listening. That's all for now. Talk to you soon.